Hey folks, does anybody know if there's a host for this session?
No, I think that we just organize things among ourselves. So
okay,
yeah,
I think I was first on the list, so I'm happy to get started. If folks are okay with that, let me share screen. Can everybody see the screen? Yes, great. Okay, I'll get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Nikos Syrogiannis. I'm an assistant professor at Indiana University Bloomington, and I'll be presenting some work today on concrete batch plants and their environmental justice implications, as well as their environmental quality concerns. So what is a concrete batch plant and why are we interested in those small facilities? So as you see here in the picture on the poster, a concrete batch plant is a small industrial facility that mixes cement with gravel and water to produce concrete. Right? So concrete is a major element in all construction projects. The unique feature of this small industry is that once concrete is poured, the clock starts ticking. So the concrete needs to be delivered as fast as possible to its final destination, which is a building site, a construction site. Otherwise, it's going to harden, right? So those facilities have an incentive to be located as close as they can to their end users, to their clients. From an environmental perspective, they are major emitters of primary particulate matter, right? So during the mixing of cement with gravel, there are a lot of PM emissions that are released. Because those facilities are very small, they often do not have to report their emissions to the Environmental Protection Agency or other state environmental agencies. So we know very little about them. We don't know where they are. We don't know how many they are. So all the information we have about them, for the most part, comes from the US Census of Manufacturers. So you can see here on the top right-hand corner in Figure 1, we have a list of states. With the red dots, we have the number of concrete batch plants in every state as they are reported in the Census of Manufacturers. And then on the blue dot, we have the equivalent number based on the National Emissions Inventory. This is an EPA data set that the Environmental Protection Agency in the US collects. And there is a very big discrepancy, exactly because those facilities are not required to report their emissions. The EPA knows close to nothing about them. But because for tax purposes, they have to report to the US Census of Manufacturers, based on the US Census, we know where they are. We know how many they are in every state. So for example, instead of Texas, we have about 500 of those plants operating. The EPA knows nothing about them. There are 0 plants according to the EPA in Texas. We focus in Houston for this paper because Houston is the only city in the US that has no zoning policy. Right, so industrial facilities can locate anywhere they want in the city. There are no industrial zones. So as you can see here from the map in the middle of the poster, the red dots represent locations where those concrete batch plants are. Right, so they are dispersed in the city. They are often located right next to schools, hospitals, or residential areas. Right, so what we did is we collected data from the actual permits of those concrete batch plants, and we calculated the total amount of PM emissions that they release. So in Figure 2, we have plotted here the distribution of emissions of PM of all industrial facilities in Texas. So the red line here represents the median facility. So the median industrial facility in Texas emits about 2 tons of particulate matter a year. If we collect the emissions from all those 128 concrete batch plants and consider them as one facility, then this green line represents their total annual emissions, right? So there is a very large discrepancy between individual emissions of batch plants and how much they emit collectively. So they are in the very top of PM polluters within the state. What we also did is we tried to examine whether there are environmental justice implications in their siting. And we find that those batch plants tend to locate closer to low-income communities, right? So you see here on Figure 3, we're plotting the log of median household income at the census tract. and the number of concrete batch plants within a 5-mile radius from the centroid of the tract, right? So as income increases, the number of batch plants within the buffer decreases. So we have a lot more batch plants closer to low-income communities and also closer to census tracts with a high share of Hispanic population. We don't find any evidence for whites and blacks. So my 5 minutes are almost up. So just to say that part of our future work is to examine whether siting of those batch plants has impacts on property values in a given neighborhood. So we have some data on properties in Houston, and we want to examine how siting of those facilities affects residential property values. So with that, I'm going to stop and happy to take questions. Okay, hearing no questions, I'm going to hand it over to the next presenter.
Okay, hello everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, okay, I'll just share my presentation. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, great. So our paper is titled "Do Small Farmers Benefit from Participating in Producer Companies? Evidence from the Telangana State in India." Now, just to give you a brief background, in 2006, there was a major policy change at the central level, which allowed small farmers to come together and change their informal groups and register themselves as companies if they wanted. Now, these were called producer companies, and it was very interesting to see how the Indian farmer, the profile of an average Indian farmer with given the socio-economic background and their education levels, how they managed to act as entrepreneurs and take over and run a company on the principles of profit maximization. This was because the government completely withdrew itself from all forms of decision making, and it was all left to the small farmers. So now in recent times, the government has started allocating a lot of the agricultural budgets towards the establishment of these producer companies. So we wanted to see what are the impacts that it is having on its members and whether these are running successfully or not. And we decided to divulge deeper into this. So we conducted a survey of around 470 farmers in the state of Telangana in India. Now Telangana, because it has a good concentration of FPCs, so we could get a variety of FPCs that we wanted for the study. So we conducted a survey of around 470 farmers in India and in Telangana, and equally divided between control and treatment group. Treatment group being the farmers that were part of an FPC, and control being the ones that were not part of an FPC. So we initially estimate the predicted probability that a small farmer receives the treatment being the FPC membership. And we find out that the farmers were equally likely to become members of an FPC, except for two factors that influenced their decision positively to be an FPC member. That was larger family size was more likely to influence in a positive way to become an FPC member. Similarly, larger net operated area, cultivated area, was more likely to influence them in a positive way to become an FPC member. Now, we carry out, along with multiple matching methods, we also carry out OLS estimates to look at the impact that this membership had on three main variables. The first one was agricultural intensification, which we measure by the total value of all the inputs used given per unit or per acre of the cultivated area. The second impact variable was the price realization of the red gram farmers. Now we looked at red gram farmers because it was difficult to generalize these results among multiple value chains. And our third main impact variable was the choice of sale channel, whether they are more likely, these FPC members, are they more likely to sell through a formal mode of sale channel, or are they more likely to sell through informal methods of sale channels, such as the money lender or through the private traders that are not formal in nature. So given the three matching estimators, the radius matching, where we set our caliper to 0.2 standard deviations on all the observable characteristics, nearest neighbor matching, and the propensity score matching, we find that at least in 2 out of 3 matching techniques, we find positive support for all our impact variables, that FPC members are more likely to be agri-intensive compared to the non-members. Similarly, they are more likely to receive better prices for their produce compared to the non-members, and they are more likely to sell through a formal mode of sale channel compared to the non-members. When we looked at the OLS estimates, we again get a confirmation for this, where we see that FPC members are more likely to be agri-intensive. It is negatively related to age, that is, younger farmers are more likely to be agri-intensive compared to the older farmers. Similarly, larger your net operated area, you are less likely to be agri-intensive, and access to formal loans again is positively related to your agri-intensification activities. Similarly, on price realization, our OLS estimates gives a positive and a significant support in terms of FPC membership. So these farmers are more likely to receive better prices. They are also more likely to have larger net operated areas, which probably gives them the benefits of economies of scale. They are more likely to sell through, so the ones that sell through formal mode of sale channel are more likely to receive better prices, and the higher expenditure incurred or input costs reduces their price realization. Similarly, in terms of the choice of sale channels, we see that FPC members are more likely to sell through formal modes of sale channel. Now here, formal modes of sale channel are the government market yards compared to the informal sale channels. Women are more likely to sell through formal sale channels. Similarly, higher your social capital, which is measured by the number of siblings living nearby, you are less likely to sell through a formal mode of sale channel. Similarly, if you are more dependent on public transportation or hired trucks, then you are less likely to sell through a formal mode of sale channel, because informal buyers usually come to your farm to collect the produce, so that reduces your transportation cost. So given our results, our study gives a good evidence to the organizational innovation, that is the FPC, which is being rampantly expanded in India. So our study acts as evidence that FPC can be a good method, a good vehicle, a good organization that empowers decision making at the small farmer level, and withdrawal of state interference in decision making may not be such a bad idea. And a full stack development approach from the FPCs at such a nascent level may not be the best idea, but eventually we believe that this is a good mode of organization. Yeah, so that's my time. If you have any questions, please do let me know. Okay, thank you.
Good day, everyone. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. So I'll be presenting a paper on analysis of maize biomass value web and household livelihood security in Nigeria. So a little background on the study. It has been observed that livelihood insecurity, micronutrient deficiency, hunger generally in sub-Saharan Africa are still at high levels, while at the same time, the demand, both domestic and international, for non-food processed agricultural products are on the increase. So in an attempt to bridge this gap, concepts are needed that can help to improve household livelihood livelihood security for the poor through increased food production, while at the same time supplying sufficient non-food processed biomass. So in an attempt to do this, the concepts which have been in place before now is the conventional value chain approach, which analyzes the series of activities, the profitability, efficiency, and factors involved in the production of raw products. However, this seems to be ineffective in order to bridge this gap between the need for non-food processed agricultural products as well as the food production. So this unraveled the need for the biomass-based value web, which described the complex systems of interlinked value chain activities, ranging from production to trading of agricultural products. So it is in this regard that, but this concept is still kind of relatively new in terms of usage in Nigeria. So as a result, there is little policy efforts in order to maximize the potentials available in the biomass-based value web. So with respect to this study sets out to achieve the following objectives. Firstly, to identify the different food and non-food uses of maize within the biomass value web. Secondly, to analyze the livelihood security status of maize farming households. And thirdly, to examine the effects of involvement in maize biomass value web on the livelihood security status. So the data of the study was primary data, and it was collected from an aggregate of 288 farming households, which spread across 20 communities in North Central Nigeria. And the sample households were selected through a 3-stage random sampling technique. In the first stage, 2 agricultural development project zones were selected from each of Niger and Nasarawa states, and these 2 states were used specifically due to the production of maize in the region. In fact, in every agricultural project zone of each state, maize production is predominant, as well as the consumption of maize, and they rank among the top producers in the country. So in the second stage, 5 communities were randomly selected from the complete list of communities in each zone, while in the last stage, 15 maize farming households were selected using the snowball technique. And in the snowball technique that was adopted, a sampled maize farming household will be the one to refer another maize farming household within the same community. And this continued in a cycle until the last maize farming household was sampled in the community. So in all, a total of 288 farming households were sampled. And the data that were collected was on maize production, the usage, the socioeconomic characteristics like the age, gender, household size, and the likes, the livelihood security variables through the administration of questionnaire. And for the result of the study, for table 1, we can now see the summary statistics of some of the socioeconomic characteristics that were analyzed. The average age of the farmers in the study area was about 49 years, with an average of about 8 years of schooling. Then the farming experience of approximately 20 years, and the household size of approximately 6 in adult male equivalents. And for the usage of maize, on the average, the household used maize for at least 3 uses within the biomass value web. And for the composite household livelihood security index, an average value of 0.43 was estimated. While for the usage of maize, that's for objective 1, the result of that is in table 2, where we can see that the most predominant use of maize in the study area was for suwo, which is boiled maize paste. A local delicacy here in Nigeria, then followed by cooked or roasted maize, while the least usage was for masa, which is also a local delicacy in Nigeria. And for the level of involvement in the biomass value web, the Affinda Index which was originally proposed for estimating market concentration, was adopted. And the index is defined as the square of the ratio of the monetary value of maize usage by the household and the maximum obtainable monetary value, square of the ratio of the maximum value of maize usage by household and maximum obtainable monetary value of maize usage in the area. So based on the mean value, which was obtained, that was 0.52. So the farming households were classified into low and high level of involvement. So it was discovered that about 64% of the household had low involvement in biomass value web, while only 36% can be said to have high involvement in maize biomass value web. And for the second objective, that's the livelihood security status of household. For the livelihood security estimation, we adopted several indicators which were aggregated to compute the livelihood security index. And the indicators that were used covers 5 domains. That's the economic security, the food security, the health security, education security, and empowerment security. Each of these indicators have sub-indicators which were used to compute each. And since all these indicators were measured on different scales, for example, the empowerment security indicator was measured on 3 scale indicators, while the education security was measured on 5 scale indicators. So since they were measured on different scales, so the standardization approach that is used in measuring the life expectancy in human development reports was adopted, and recently adopted by Kamaruddin and Samsudin, as well as Shaheen and Sanzudo. So this approach was estimated, which is a 3-stage standardization approach. In the first stage, the sub-indicator used to compute each of these indicators were computed. In the second stage, these were aggregated to give the security domain. And in the last stage, all the security domains were aggregated to compute the livelihood security index, which is known as the composite household livelihood security. And for the third objective, for the effects of the level of involvement of maize biomass value web on the livelihood security status. For the level of involvement of maize biomass value web, the Affinda Index that was computed was used, and in a 5-equation model, the seemingly unrelated regression analysis was carried out in order to analyze the effects of involvement in maize biomass value web on the 5 security domain. And it was observed that maize biomass value web involvement has a positive significant effect on economic security and food security indices, while surprisingly it had a negative significant effects, though on 10% statistical level on health security index. So in other words, involvement in maize biomass value web, a unit increase in the index of usage of maize will bring about 10% increase in economic security of the household, while a unit increase in the index of usage of maize will bring about 17% increase in food security index, holding every other factor constant. So from this, the study has shown that intensified usage of maize within the biomass value web can significantly contribute to the improved livelihood security of rural households in sub-Saharan Africa. However, as it has been reported, there is still low level of usage, as affirmed by the 64% of those that are having low level of involvement compared to those that are having high level of involvement. So this study also revealed that the majority of the household had low economic, health, and education security. While for the profile of the livelihood security, it was observed that out of the 5 domains, the main driving force for the composite household livelihood security is food security, which contributes about 27%, as against others that contribute lesser.
Also, from the study, we have observed that the maize biomass value web involvement have a positive and significant effect on economic security and food security. So with this, and having reported earlier that there is low level of involvement in maize biomass value web. So this study therefore recommended sensitization programs, which can help to encourage household diversification in various enterprises that are available within the maize biomass value web. Also, provision of credit facilities can as well encourage the household to diversify into various enterprises that are available in maize biomass value web in order to improve the livelihood security, especially of the rural poor. Thank you. So I don't know if anyone is having any question. So if there is none, thank you. The next.
I think we can't hear
yeah.
you.
You're not audible.
Sorry. Hello, I am Hyun-Yang, a PhD student at Korean University. My research topic is examining the carbon emissions technical efficiency. Global greenhouse gas emissions increased by more than 50% from 1990 to 2020, and global agricultural greenhouse gas emissions accounted for 14% to 13% of the total emissions. Agricultural greenhouse gas emissions represent a significant proportion of the total global emissions. By 2050, the world's population is expected to be 9.6 billion, and national income is also expected to increase. So demand for food, meat, and dairy products is expected to increase. Input factors such as energy and fertilizers are expected to increase, which will cause an increase in greenhouse gas emissions. So the agriculture is expected to play an important role in total greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, reducing carbon emissions should be pursued parallel to agricultural production objectives. This study aims to estimate the greenhouse gas emission, technical efficiency, and mitigation potential in the agricultural sector. This study employs the stochastic frontier approach combined with directional distance function. Using the translog production function, the stochastic frontier model is specified as follows. The data are obtained from the FAO and Climate Watch database for 127 countries from 1995 to 2018. The following table shows the estimation result. The added values and greenhouse gas emission inefficiency have a nonlinear relationship, and the marginal effect of capital on inefficiency is 0.036. Labor and energy were not significant. This is because mechanization and automation play an important role in the labor. In addition, the agricultural sector is a non-energy sector, and energy use has achieved efficiency through using the renewable energy. The estimation result of GETE and the GMP is expressed the following graph. The average GETE is 0.196, with most countries have low GETE. However, the average GETE has improved from 1990 to 2020. The average GDP of developed and developing countries were 0.211 and 0.188. The average GMP is 41.7 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, which is also increased by 14% from 1995 to 2018. While developed countries' GMP decreased, developing countries' GMP increased. The following figure is a relationship between GETE and the GMP. Based on the average, there was no country with a high GETE and high GMP. And low GETE and high GMP countries accounted for 17.3%. These countries are characterized by large economic scales. And low GETE and low GMP countries accounted for 42.5%. Finally, high GETE and low GMP countries accounted for 40.2%. These countries are generally eco-friendly. The GETE and GMP depends on the income level of each country. It seems to be affected by global policies such as Kyoto Protocol and Paris's agreement. To increase the GETE, each country will need active effort from the government and private sector, such as investing in environmentally friendly production technology. Thank you.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm Edward Mensah, and I am presenting the poster titled Imminent Natural Disaster and Price Gouging, Evidence from Hurricane Harvey in the US, co-authored with Craig Landry and Travis Smith. Oh. So first off, a disclaimer, we use a Nielsen dataset, and we want to state that our analysis are solely ours and not reflecting those of the University of Chicago who released the data. So a little bit of background, the practice of price gouging in the wake of a disaster is often decried by the public, which calls for government interventions to control prices. And in the US, there are price gouging laws in most states. And the Congress, even recently, the Congress has proposed some legislations of price gouging, which all intended to forbid excessive price increases. And as you can imagine, economics pundits find a problem in defining loosely what makes prices increases excessive. So what we did in this research is to address two questions. First, we want to know if prices change in terms of disaster, and if they do, whether the changes that we have just reflect those allowed by the supply and demand dynamics, or if they are really excessive. So the theoretical framework that we use is simple. Using the profit maximization problem of a monopolistic firm, and a semi-log demand function for the aggregated demand for the store. We derive optimal prices, and as you notice that it is defined for the B parameter here is the elasticity, the parameter of the elasticity, the demand elasticity. So it is defined when the demand is not inelastic. And using implicit function theorem, then we realize that the optimal price, the optimal change in prices is given by this formula. So basically what we did later on will be to try to compute this and see if what we observe will depart from this benchmark or not. So an idea about our data, we use, as I said, the Nielsen home scan data to have demand for 4 products, and then we aggregate at the store level. And to have a data on heavy warning timing, we use data from NCI and NOAA, and also Google search, because for some counties we didn't have a good appraisal of the warning status, so we complemented with a Google search. And the FEMA data on individual assistance applications help us define our pre-disaster years and the post-disaster years. In the post-disaster years, we are interested in 3 specific timing. The timing at which Hurricane Harvey made landfall, and the shorter period before that, where counties might have received the warning for Harvey, and the 3-week shorter a period after landfall. So this is where we want to see whether we have a price gouging or not. So the empirical framework, if you remember in the theoretical framework, we realized that optimal prices are defined only if the demand pre-disaster is elastic. So we check that just for checking, and then we estimate a flexible demand, a semi-log demand function, where we are able to capture the changes in the elasticity parameter. And for example, the sum of beta post plus beta omega here is just the change in the demand, the demand elasticity parameter from the pre-disaster period to the warning period. So once we have that, using the comparative static formula that we derived and showed earlier, we are able to compute what is the benchmark, what we theoretically expect as a change in prices at the period of warning. After knowing those benchmark values, then we now regress the prices on time, so that we capture what is the observed price, changes, and then we compare that to the benchmark to see if we have an inefficient a change or not. So what did we find? Roughly, we find that prices do change in terms of a Hurricane Harvey, but the changes are little, and they corroborate a prior work. For milk, for example, when you take at landfall, where the benchmark, so the change allowed optimally was up to 86%, we only observe an increase by 9%. So this suggests that we do not have an excessive manipulation of prices, as the public would say. So the implications are that the price gouging laws, if they are to be enacted, they need to set not subjective price caps, but rely on theoretical guidance, where they will be able to set a clear price cap if they have to, And our study also, as a proof of concept, to try to find some cap for the 4 products that we studied. Thank you. So, any question? Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Yao Chen. I'm a PhD candidate from the University of Georgia. So my paper is weather shocks and labor saving and land augmenting technology. So this work is at the very beginning stage. I'll be happy for comments. So the central question in this project is what type of farm technology smallholder farmers prefer to adopt as a response to weather shocks? So do they prefer to adopt technology that will help them to save more time for other activities such as off-farm business, or do they prefer to invest in technology that will restore soil fertility? So this question is important because the welfare of many households and farming activity in many developing countries depend heavily on weather conditions, especially on rainfall. So understanding the direction of this relationship can help policymakers to design better or effective strategy to help farmers to cope with climate change. So the objective of this study is to examine the smallholder farmers' choice of farm technology when they are faced with adverse weather conditions. The main contribution is that answers to this research question can indicate how farmers allocate scarce resources between farm inputs when they face extreme weather conditions such as drought shocks. So to answer this research question, we use household plot level information on technology adoption and also state level information on weather conditions from Nigeria. We use the standardized precipitation index as a measure of weather shock. So any value below -1 of the standardized precipitation index is considered as a shock. So this figure shows the yearly distribution of the average SPI. Here is our model. So we use a panel fixed effect model. So the outcome variable here equal 1 if the technology is adopted in the 12 months prior to the survey. And our main variable of interest is shock, which is the number of months in the 12 months prior to the data collection for which SPI is less or equal to -1. And we include in our model the average temperature in the 12 months prior to data collection, as well as household characteristics such as the household head, age, gender, education level, and also household size. We also control for state and year fixed effects. So let's take a look at the result. Basically, what we find is that for labor-saving technology, farmers are more likely to adopt this technology, especially animal traction technology and the use of pesticide. But they are less likely to adopt machinery technology such as tractors. Regarding land augmenting technology, we find that they are also more likely to adopt fertilizer and the use of irrigation to improve their land productivity. So the key takeaway from the finding is that in general, as a response or as a strategy to weather shocks, farmers are more likely to adopt both type of technology, but they will opt for the least costly technology, especially the least costly labor-saving technology option. So the next step is to use alternative measure of shock, of weather shock, as well as other methodology to see if our result hold regardless of the methodology used. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any question? Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hyunju Jung. I'm a graduate student in the Department of Food and Research Economics at Korea University. I will talk about my research titled, Does Agricultural Innovation Accelerate Agriculture Export Growth? First of all, agricultural innovation has been considered an important factor that determines agricultural growth. Thus, innovative behavior in the agriculture sector has been vigorous recently. While the number of patent and R&D expenditures represents innovation performance and quality practices, the OECD reported that the total number of patent applications in agriculture-related technologies increased on average about 1.44 times over the period between 2000 and 2013. Many studies show that innovation and trade would create a virtuous cycle affecting each other positively. Although innovation and trade contribute to economic growth, especially in a way of expanding agricultural production. The researcher has paid little attention to innovation and trade in the agricultural sector. Thus, the objective of this paper is to determine whether agricultural innovation contributes to export growth directly and indirectly via agricultural production. Now, moving on to the data and methodology part, to conduct empirical analysis, a panel data set comprising 20 developed countries from 1999 to 2013 is used. To examine the determinants of agriculture export growth, this paper employs the dynamic panel model with a two-step estimation procedure. In both steps, the generalized method of the moment is used to address the endogeneity problem in the lagged variable in the dynamic panel model. Each step is constructed like the equation here. So let's move on to the results. The results of the Arnaldo, Bond, and Hansen-J test show that all models fit well to the data. The table 2 presents the estimates of the lagged dependent variable for production and export are 0.98 and 0.93 respectively. The effect of agricultural production on export quantity indicates that 0.0476%, implying that there exists a production channel for variables to indirectly induce export growth. In table 3, the long-run direct, indirect, and total effects of the relative number of patents on export show positive and significant results. However, the long-run effects of R&D expenditures on export quantity present insignificant results, except for the indirect effect of 0.0056% at a 1% significance level. The findings indicate that private agriculture innovation benefits the export growth persistently, not only directly through firms' activities, but also indirectly through a production channel. Meanwhile, the public agriculture innovation is just effective in stimulating export through production growth. So this is the end of my presentation. Thanks for your attention. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Rain. I come from Zhejiang University. I'm a PhD student. Today I would like to share my working paper. So, can you see my screen? Hello everyone.
Yes, we can.
Okay. The title is Enhancing Total Sector Productivity in China, Crop Production, the Contributions to Food and Environmental Security. As we all know, China is the most population country in the world. The increasing food demand presents a great challenge to agricultural production. However, the production in China is constrained by both resources and the environment. So, increasing agricultural TFP is particularly important as it is an efficient measure to ensure food security and reduce the negative impact of agricultural production on the environment. This article tries to address two questions below. How will China's agricultural TFP change in the future under different future socio-economic scenarios? And what are the impacts of changes in agricultural TFP on food and environmental security? To address the questions, we combine an agroeconomic land system model with a well-recognized TFP calculation method to measure TFP changes in China's crop sector. Firstly, this study uses MACPI to simulate the production outcomes based on the endogenous technological change and the different future socio-economic scenarios. Secondly, we do post calculation based on the model output. The data envelope analysis is employed to estimate TFP changes in China. Then, we use TFP and the indicators from MACPI model to analyze the impact of TFP on food and environmental security. What follows are some key results. Firstly, the results reveals that the TFP in the future will continue to grow, but vary across different scenarios. There is the highest TFP growth in SSP5, followed by SSP4, SSP1, and SSP3, while SSP2 has the lowest growth in TFP with an increase of 10.5% by 2060. The second main finding is about the impact of TFP on food security. We found that SSP1, SSP4, and SSP5, which associated with higher TFP growth, will have higher self-sufficiency rate and lower consumer price relative to SSP2 and SSP3, which have lower TFP growth. After food security, we investigate the impact of TFP growth on environmental security. The water scarcity can be alleviated, namely by 63% in SSP1, 63% in SSP2, 67% in SSP3, 70% in SSP4, and 64% in SSP5. That's mainly because the TFP growth gives room for adjustment of spatial structure, especially water shortage is in some water-scarce provinces in China, such as Henan, Xinjiang, Anhui province. Compared with 2005, the greenhouse gas emissions induced by planting activities are reduced by 42% in SSP1, 32% in SSP2, 26% in SSP3, 30% in SSP4, and 11% in SSP5 in 2006. That's mainly due to the decrease of cropland accompanying with the TFP growth. There are three main conclusions now. Firstly, agricultural TFP in China will continue to grow, but vary across different scenarios and the specific crop types. Secondly, the growth of TFP ensures food security by lowering consumer prices and by bolstering self-sufficiency. Finally, the TFP growth ensures environmental security by alleviating the scarcity of agricultural water and reduce the GHG emissions induced by planting activities. That's all my presentation. Thanks.
Okay, I will share my poster. Hello, everyone. I'm Jiang Yuanliang from Zhejiang University. Today, the title of the paper I will report is Unintended Consequences of Decentralized Food Safety Regulation. It's a little different from the previous title in the order list. In the first 20 years of the 21st century, China reformed its food regulation system several times. Although decentralization is a mainstream political arrangement for the provision and the governance of public goods in most countries, the decentralization of food safety regulation remains a topic of debate among researchers and policymakers. The existing literature has empirically tested the effect and the mechanism of centralization or decentralization in many public sectors, but there is no sufficient empirical evidence on the efficiency of decentralized food safety regulation. Regulation is an important environmental factor affecting the several of firms. The impact of regulator power dynamics on firm performance and industry development of the food industry is rarely studied. Next, let me introduce the decentralized food safety regulation. There is a quasi-experiment in China's food processing and manufacturing industry. In 2013, April, the State Council of China decided to delegate food safety regulatory authority of industry from provincial governments to city-level governments. The objective of this study is known. Does decentralized food safety regulation improve the food safety? If yes, how? If not, is food safety compromised for food industry growth? We adopt a staggered difference in difference design to estimate how food processing and manufacturing firms respond to the decentralization policy in terms of net entry rate. The variables are defined as shown in the poster. Then the first part I'm going to talk about is the preliminary findings. First, the decentralization has no impact on food safety from the provincial level evidence. Second, the decentralization significantly encourages the entry of firms and self-employed business into food industry. In addition, look at the result 3, we found that the number of firms entering is negatively correlated with the punishment intensity of relative regulation agencies. This is the cause of why food is not safer and why lots of firms enter. The result 4 is heterogeneity analysis. The results show that decentralization reform in provinces with more developed food industry economy and in cities with mayors who have been in office for more than 3 years has a stronger effect on market entry. However, we adopt triple D design and find the decentralization hurts the economic performance of incumbent and large-scale firms, as the result 5 shows. The possible reason is that a large number of small firms enter and compete for resources with the large firms. We failed to find evidence that food safety improved due to decentralization, which is the goal of this reform conducted by central government. After decentralization, more small-scale food firms and self-employed business entered the market, which local governments seem desire. However, the entry of small-scale firms and business does not necessarily benefit local food economics. To sum up, this is a lose-lose situation for both central and local government. Okay, I'm done reporting. Thanks for listening. Any question or suggestion? Okay, if not, the next, please.
I guess I'll just go ahead and share my screen. Hello, everyone. So the title, so my name is Tinusha Gimire. I was a student in McGill University, and I worked with Professor Orali Haru and Soumya Balasubramaniam. And the title of our paper is Migration, Gender, Labor Division, and Food Insecurity in Tajikistan. Just going with a little bit of background on migration in Tajikistan itself. Migration is predominantly male, and it's mostly people living in low-income countries like Tajikistan that have to migrate in order to support their own family. And what this does is it transforms the agriculture sector, because on one hand, those that have left behind, now there are tasks that must be done by those who are still living in the home country. And this leads to feminization of agriculture because it's predominantly male who are leaving. But then on the other hand, remittances sent to the household by migrants can help with food insecurity issues as their purchasing power strengthens. So it becomes an empirical question to answer. Thus, our study tries to answer this question. So we study the relationship between migration, food insecurity, and gender labor division in 3 production systems in Tajikistan. A little bit of background on Tajikistan itself. It is a low-income landlocked country which is located in Central Asia and has a population of 9 million, where 3/4 of the people reside in rural area and 71% are still engaged in agriculture work. Tajikistan has high rates of unemployment. It faced civil war, and due to stark poverty, it leads to large migration, especially to Russia. And between 2010 and 2015, Tajikistan had the highest average percentage of GDP attributed to remittances, which was approximately 40%. And the three production type system we do our research is on Deccan farm, which are owned by 12 to 13% of the household, who are usually socially economically better off. And usually cotton is cultivated, and kitchen farm everybody owns. Presidential plots were distributed to households that had less than 0.15 hectare of land, so that they could improve their food security issues. So the data was collected in 3 agriculture producing regions of Tajikistan, and a survey was administered to mostly to all women, and a total of 1,920 households were there in 160 villages, and 904 households did not have any migrant. And so as we all know, whenever we want to do a comparison between migrant or non-migrant household, there will be a lot of biases, especially observed and unobserved biases. So in order to mitigate these biases, we use propensity score matching, and then we use village fixed effects as for our robustness check. And so the first step to estimating the propensity to conduct the propensity score matching is to have a propensity score, which we estimate by using the following equation, where U is unemployment rate, E is a vector of environmental factors, and X is a vector of socioeconomic characteristics that we measure. And here we can see before and after matching, we can see that the means have now really aligned, which are one of the 2 conditions in using propensity score matching, which is that there is the means are the same between migrant and non-migrant households, and another is that the observable characteristics are not a cause or the effect of migration. And if we look at the result, we find that non-migrant households face less food insecurity compared to migrant household, because we can see the number of food shortages faced by non-migrant household is more, and it is significant at 1% level. And then if we look at the gender labor division, we can see that women in migrant household perform more of the task compared to non-migrant household, as we can see in terms of irrigation system management. Women in migrant household determine the amount of irrigation water to apply is more. And in terms of agriculture crop management, who applies fertilizers, who determines the quantities of livestock to sell and consume is done by females. So in conclusion, we find that there is feminization of agriculture happening in Tajikistan, and remittances is helping with food insecurity. So if anybody has any question, please ask. If not, the next person can present. Okay. Thank you.
Are we all done? It seems we have all presented our posters, right?
I think so too.
I think we are left with about 2 people, but I'm not sure if they are online.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, thank you to all of us, and see you next time maybe.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. It's very interesting. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.